The day she looked down on me, the small velvet box in my jacket pocket felt heavier than it should have. Every time I touched it, I smiled. 3 years. 3 years of double shifts, sleepless nights, skipped vacations, and eating instant noodles more times than I could count. Every extra dollar I earned had one purpose. Sophia. I wanted to give her the future she deserved. Maybe I couldn't buy a mansion. Maybe I couldn't drive a sports car. But I could promise her something that money couldn't buy. Loyalty. Respect. A man who would never stop choosing her. I looked at the ring one last time before closing the box. It's finally happening, I whispered to myself. Jake leaned against the garage door with a greasy wrench in his hand. You've looked at that ring at least 20 times today. I counted 23. I laughed. He shook his head. You know what worries me? What? You smile too much when you talk about Sophia. I frowned. That's supposed to be a bad thing? No, he sighed. It just feels like you're the only one smiling in that relationship. I laughed it off. You worry too much. I hope I do. He tossed me the garage keys. Go home. Take a shower. Don't make a millionaire's daughter wait. I caught the keys. You really think she'll say yes? Jake looked at me for several seconds. I think you'll ask with your whole heart. That's not what I asked. I know. He forced a smile. I just hope she answers with hers. An hour later, I stood outside the most expensive restaurant in the city. Crystal lights, luxury cars, people wearing suits that probably cost more than my monthly salary. I looked down at my simple navy blue jacket. It was the nicest thing I owned. Still, I suddenly felt underdressed. I took a deep breath. You fixed engines worth $500,000. I muttered. You can survive one dinner. The hostess smiled. Good evening. Reservation? Sophia Bennett. Right this way. As I walked through the restaurant, I saw her immediately. She looked beautiful. Elegant black dress. Silver earrings. Perfect smile. For 1 second, I forgot every insecurity I had ever carried. She stood up and kissed my cheek. You made it. I wouldn't miss tonight. Then I noticed a table. 5 strangers. Designer clothes. Luxury watches. Expensive perfume. Sophia smiled. Oh, right. I forgot to tell you. My college friends are joining us. One man stood up. So you're Ethan. I offer my hand. Nice to meet you. He looked at the grease stain that refused to disappear from my fingers. Then he slowly shook my hand. Bennett talks about you. I smiled. Only good things, I hope. Nobody laughed. The waiter arrived. Everyone ordered without looking at the prices. When it was my turn, I quietly picked the cheapest meal. A woman across the table smiled. So, Ethan, what do you do? I'm a mechanic. Oh, her smile became smaller. A mechanic. Another man joined in. Own your shop. Not yet. So, employee? For now. I see. The conversation moved on. Or maybe it moved away from me. They talked about vacations in Europe, luxury apartments, investment portfolios, private clubs. Every topic reminded me that I didn't belong there. Sophia barely looked at me. She laughed at every joke they made, even the bad ones. Then someone asked a question that changed everything. So, Sophia, the woman smiled. How did someone like you end up dating a mechanic? The entire table became quiet. I waited for Sophia to laugh, or defend me, or simply say, because I love him. Instead, she sighed. You really want to know? My stomach tightened. She took a sip of wine. Honestly, she looked straight at me. I've been asking myself the same question lately. The air disappeared from my lungs. One of her friends laughed nervously. Sophia continued. When we first met, I thought ambition was enough. She smiled without warmth. But ambition doesn't pay for the life I want. Nobody spoke. She looked at me again. Ethan, you work hard. I respect that. But let's be honest. You'll never be able to give me this. She waved her hand around the restaurant, the lifestyle, the connections, the opportunities. I stared at her. Sophia, she interrupted me. No, you deserve the truth. I'm tired of pretending. Every word felt like another knife. When my friends ask what my boyfriend does, I hesitate. When people see us together, I'm embarrassed. I blinked. I'm embarrassed to introduce you. Silence. Complete silence. I couldn't believe the woman I wanted to marry had just said that. I slowly reached into my pocket, not to show her the ring, just to feel it one last time. It suddenly felt worthless. I saved for 3 years, I said quietly. She frowned. What? I wanted tonight to be special. Her expression changed for a second. What do you mean? I placed a small velvet box on the table. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Sophia stared at it. Slowly, she opened it. The diamond wasn't huge, but it had cost me almost everything I owned. She looked up at me. You were going to... I nodded. I was... Her lips trembled. I gently closed the box. No, you've already answered. I stood up. Ethan, wait. For what? I mean, you meant every word. I was angry. No, you were honest. I smiled. It was the saddest smile I'd ever given anyone, and maybe that's what hurts the most. I turned around. Nobody stopped me. Not her friends. Not the waiter. Not Sophia. Outside, the cold night air hit my face. I kept walking. 1 block. 2 blocks. 3. I didn't know where I was going. I only knew I couldn't breathe inside that restaurant anymore. My phone rang. Jake. I answered without speaking. Ethan? You asked her? Ethan. I finally spoke. My answer was yes. Jake sounded confused. Then why do you sound like someone died? I looked up at the empty night sky. Because the man who believed love was enough. Did... The line stayed silent. Then Jake said something I would never forget. Listen to me carefully. I'm listening. If someone makes you feel small just so they can feel important, they never deserved your love. I closed my eyes. A single tear rolled down my cheek. I don't know how to stop loving her. You don't have to stop tonight. Jake replied softly, but promise me one thing. What? Don't spend another day trying to become enough for someone who already decided you never would be. I looked at the engagement ring one last time. Then I closed the box. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't walking toward my future. I was walking away from it. And somehow, that hurt even more than losing the woman I loved. The unexpected invitation. 3 weeks passed after the night. Everything fell apart. I'd buried myself in work because it was easier than thinking. Anguinus never lied. People did. Every morning, I unlocked my little garage before sunrise. Every evening, I locked it long after the streets had gone quiet. My phone still lit up with Sophia's name almost every day. I never answered. Sometimes she called once. Sometimes 10 times. Sometimes she sent messages. Asterisk, please let me explain. Asterisk, asterisk, can we talk? Asterisk, asterisk, I'm sorry. Asterisk, I deleted every one without opening the conversation. Jake noticed. You know, he said while wiping grease from his hands, blocking her would save your thumb. I don't trust myself. You think you'll answer? I think I'll forgive too quickly. Jake looked at me for a long moment, then keep working. I planned to. The afternoon was unusually quiet. Only one car sat inside the garage. I was tightening the last bolt when a black luxury sedan rolled to a stop outside. I barely looked up. Rich customers usually prefer dealerships, not places like mine. The driver's door opened first. A man in a dark suit stepped out and opened the rear door. An older gentleman followed. Perfect suit, silver hair, calm eyes. I recognized him immediately. Richard Bennett, Sophia's father. My stomach tightened. I wiped my hands on a rag. Mr. Bennett. He smiled politely. Ethan, I was expecting you. I imagine not. I waited for him to say what he came to say. Maybe he wanted to warn me to stay away from Sophia. Maybe he thought I was trying to get back into her life. Instead, he looked around my garage. You built this yourself? Piece by piece. It's clean. I try. I've heard you never overcharge your customers. I charge what's fair. And when someone can't pay? I shrugged. If they truly can't, I work something out. He nodded slowly. I thought so. His answer confused me. I folded my arms. With respect, sir, why are you here? He looked directly into my eyes. To thank you. I blinked. I think you've mistaken me for someone else. No, I know exactly who you are. Silence settled between us. Then he spoke again. I know what happened at the restaurant. I looked away. I'm not interested in talking about it. I'm not here to defend Sophia. That caught my attention. I never raised my daughter to treat people the way she treated you. I didn't know what to say. He sighed. I failed somewhere. I shook my head. She's an adult. She made her own choice. Perhaps. He stepped closer. But that doesn't mean I have to agree with it. For the first time since the breakup, someone from her family made me feel seen. Not pitted. Not judged. Seen. He looked at an old photograph hanging on the office wall. My parents. My younger sister. Me. You've been supporting your family for years. How do you know that? I know more about you than you realize. I frowned. What does that mean? It means I've been watching. The words should have sounded threatening. Instead, they sounded thoughtful. I've watched how you treat customers. I've watched how you speak to your employees. I've watched how you kept working after your heart was broken. I stared at him. Why? Because character reveals itself under pressure. I laughed once. So this was some kind of test? No, it was an observation. He smiled gently. You passed without knowing there was anything to pass. Jake quietly walked outside, sensed a serious conversation, and disappeared again without saying a word. Richard placed a business card on my workbench. I'd like you to visit my home tomorrow evening. I looked at the card. I don't think that's a good idea. It isn't a social visit. Then what is it? A conversation. About Sophia? No. His answer surprised me. Then about what? He paused. About the future. My future? Ours. I stared at him. I don't understand. You don't have to. Just come. I hesitated. I don't belong in your world. He smiled. That's exactly why I came here instead. Before leaving, he looked back. Ethan. Yes. There are very few people I trust. I believe you're one of them. The sedan disappeared down the road. Jake rushed back outside. What was that about? I honestly have no idea. You going? I shouldn't. But I need answers. The next evening, I stood outside the Bennett estate. The iron gate slowly opened. Everything looked exactly as I remembered from years ago. Huge gardens, stone fountains, a house that looked more like a palace. I suddenly felt like that nervous mechanic again. A butler greeted me and led me inside. Richard was waiting in a quiet study. He smiled. You came. I almost didn't. I'm glad you did. Before I could sit down, the door opened. A woman walked in carrying a stack of folders. She wore a simple cream-colored dress. No expensive jewelry. No dramatic makeup. She looked surprised to see me. Oh! Richard stood. Ethan, I'd like you to meet my eldest daughter. She offered a small smile. I'm Olivia. I shook her hand. It's nice to meet you. There was kindness in her eyes. Not curiosity. Not judgment. Kindness. Richard motioned for us to sit. I asked both of you here because it's time I spoke honestly. Neither of us interrupted. He folded his hands. My family has many successful people. He looked at Olivia. But very few people with integrity. Then he looked at me. I've spent years building a business. My greatest fear isn't losing money. It's leaving everything in the wrong hands. I still didn't understand why I was there. Then he took a slow breath and spoke the sentence that made my heart stop. Ethan, I want to ask you something that may sound impossible. I waited. Would you consider marrying my daughter? The room went completely silent. My mind raced. There was only one daughter, I thought, he could possibly mean. Sophia. I couldn't even breathe. I stared at him, convinced I had misunderstood. But the calm expression on his face told me he had never been more serious. The daughter he never meant. I don't understand. Those were the only words I could force out. Richard remained calm. Olivia looked just as confused as I felt. Then Richard gave me a small smile. Ethan, he said, I can almost hear what you're thinking. I think you've lost your mind. He actually laughed. No, you think I'm asking you to marry Sophia. I stared at him. Aren't you? He slowly shook his head. Not Sophia. My heartbeat stopped. He turned toward the woman sitting beside me. I'm talking about Olivia. I looked from him to Olivia, then back again. Neither of us spoke. Olivia finally broke the silence. Father, her voice was barely above a whisper. What are you talking about? I've never heard you mention this before. You haven't? So why are you saying it now? Richard folded his hands. Because I don't have the luxury of waiting anymore. I frowned. What does that mean? He took a deep breath before answering. My doctor gave me some difficult news last month. Olivia's face immediately changed. You promised me the treatment was working. It is for now. For now? He nodded. My heart isn't as strong as it used to be. The room became painfully quiet. I didn't know where to look. Richard smiled as if he were talking about tomorrow's weather. I've spent my entire life building something. The company, the employees, the people who depend on us. Then he looked at Olivia. And she's been carrying most of that weight, without anyone noticing. I turned toward her. You work at the company? She smiled awkwardly. I've worked there for almost 8 years. I thought Sophia handled most of the business. Olivia laughed softly. A lot of people think that. So, you do the work? I prefer to stay behind the scenes. Richard nodded proudly. Every major success our company has had in the last 5 years carries Olivia's fingerprints. I looked at her again. She didn't seem proud. She looked uncomfortable. I never wanted recognition, she admitted. I only wanted the company to survive. Richard leaned forward, and that's exactly why I trust her. I slowly exhaled. I still don't understand where I fit into any of this. You fit because of your character. My character? I've watched you for years. You've said that. And every observation led me to the same conclusion. He pointed at me. You cannot buy integrity. I shook my head. I'm just a mechanic. No, you're a man who kept his word, even when nobody was watching. I don't see why that matters. It matters because money attracts talented people. He paused. But power attracts dishonest ones. Olivia quietly looked at her father. You think I'm surrounded by the wrong people. I know you are. She lowered her eyes. He turned back toward me. I don't need another businessman in this family. I need someone who reminds people what honesty looks like. I almost laughed. With respect, I think you're asking the wrong man. Why? Because your family already made it clear where I belong. Richard understood immediately. Sophia. I nodded. I loved her. I wanted to marry her. And she looked me in the eye and said I wasn't good enough. The memory still hurt. I won't spend the rest of my life trying to earn approval from the same family. Richard's expression became serious. Ethan, my daughter rejected you. I did not. They're still your family. They are. But I refuse to let one person's pride define everyone else. I stood. I'm sorry. I appreciate everything you said, but I can't do this. Olivia stood as well. I understand. There shouldn't be pressure. I agree. I reached for my jacket. I think it's better if I leave. Before I could take another step, the study door suddenly opened. What exactly is going on here? The voice froze all three of us. Sophia. She stood in the doorway. Her eyes moved between me and Olivia. Then she looked at her father. Dad, what is he doing here? Richard answered calmly. I invited him. Why? I wanted to speak with him. About what? Nobody answered immediately. Sophia looked at me. You came here. I was invited. You actually accepted? I didn't know why until tonight. She crossed her arms. So, tell me, what was so important? Richard looked directly at her. I asked Ethan if he would consider marrying my daughter. Sophia's eyes widened. For one brief second, she smiled. Then she looked at me. So that's why you're here. She almost laughed. You really thought I'd take you back? Richard interrupted her. Enough. She frowned. What? I wasn't talking about you. Her smile disappeared. What? I meant Olivia. The silence that followed felt endless. Sophia slowly turned toward her sister, then back toward her father. No. Her voice trembled. No, you're lying. I'm not. She laughed bitterly. So that's your solution? You replace me? That's what you think this is? You want the man I dumped to marry my sister? Richard remained calm. You rejected a good man. I recognize his value. So now you give him to her? Olivia finally spoke. This isn't what you think. Then explain it. I can't. Because you don't even understand it yourself. Sophia pointed at me. You came here looking for revenge. I didn't. Don't lie. I didn't even know Olivia existed until tonight. She stared at me. For the first time since our breakup, I didn't see confidence in her eyes. I saw fear. Real fear. She turned back toward her father. You always chose her. Each outside. I protected her. Same thing. You praised her. Because she earned it. And what about me? You wanted applause without responsibility. The words hit harder than anyone expected. Sophia looked like she had been slapped. You never believed in me. I wanted you to become better. You wanted another daughter. I wanted both. She looked toward Olivia. You've been waiting for this. Olivia shook her head immediately. No, I don't want any of this. Liar. I'm telling the truth. You always act innocent. I've spent my whole life cleaning up everyone's mistakes. Sophia laughed through tears. There it is. The perfect daughter. Richard stood. Enough. No. Sophia stepped backward. I'm done listening. She looked at me one last time. I can't believe you betray me like this. I met her eyes without raising my voice. You walked away from me. I didn't come here to hurt you. I came because your father asked me to listen. She didn't answer. She simply turned around and slammed the door behind her. The echo filled the room. No one spoke. I looked at Richard. I told you this was a mistake. He slowly closed his eyes. No, Ethan. His voice carried years of exhaustion. This wasn't a mistake. He looked toward the closed door. Everything that happened long before tonight was the truth behind their family. The room stayed silent long after Sophia slammed the door. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I looked at Richard. I should leave. He slowly opened his eyes. If you leave now, you'll walk away believing the wrong story. I've already heard enough. No, you've only heard Sophia's side. I sighed. I don't want to become part of your family's problems. Olivia spoke softly. Neither did I. I turned toward her. She looked exhausted, not because of what had just happened, because it looked like she had been carrying this weight for years. Richard leaned back in his chair. Olivia. She nodded. I understand. She looked at me. Would you sit down just for a few minutes? I hesitated. Every instinct told me to leave, but something in her voice stopped me. I sat down again. Olivia smiled sadly. Thank you. She took a slow breath. You probably think Sophia and I grew up together. I did. We didn't. I frowned. What do you mean? My mother died when I was 12. I'm sorry. She nodded. My father spent years raising me alone. Then he married Sophia's mother. I stayed quiet. For a while, everything seemed normal. What changed? Sophia's mother believed I wasn't really part of the family. Richard lowered his head. I should have stopped it sooner. Olivia continued. She never shouted at me. She didn't have to. She made sure I always felt like a guest inside my own home. I couldn't hide my surprise. Sophia knew? Olivia smiled without happiness. She was still a child. Children learn from people around them. Richard closed his eyes, and I failed both of them. The guilt in his voice sounded real. Olivia continued. When Sophia wanted something, she got it. a new phone, a new car, trips overseas. She laughed quietly. And me, I learned how to balance company accounts. You never complained? There wasn't time. Richard looked at me. The company almost collapsed 15 years ago. I never told anyone, not even Sophia. I frowned. Why? She wasn't interested. Olivia answered before he could. She wanted fashion shows. I wanted to save our employees. You were still young. I had to grow up quickly. Silence returned. I finally understood why Olivia looked older than her age. Responsibility changes people. Richard slowly stood. Wait here. He walked toward an old wooden cabinet. After a moment, he returned carrying a small box. He placed it on the table. What is this? My greatest treasure. He opened it carefully. Inside were dozens of handwritten letters. The paper had turned slightly yellow with age. My wife's letters. Olivia smiled gently. I haven't seen those in years. Richard picked up one envelope. Margaret wrote these before she passed away. He handed one to me. I shouldn't read something so personal. I want you to. I slowly unfolded the paper. The handwriting was neat, elegant. The first sentence immediately caught my attention. Asterisk. If our daughters ever choose between a rich man and a kind man, I hope they choose the kind one. Asterisk. I stopped reading. Richard nodded. Keep going. I continued. Asterisk. Money can build a beautiful house. Asterisk. Asterisk. Only kindness can build a happy home. Asterisk. My throat tightened. Another line caught my eye. Asterisk. Never judge someone's worth by their bank account. Judge them by how they treat people when nobody is watching. Asterisk. I couldn't speak. Those words reminded me of my own father. He used to tell me almost the same thing. Asterisk. A poor man can sleep peacefully. Asterisk. Asterisk. A dishonest rich man never truly rests. Asterisk. I smiled without realizing it. My dad used to say something similar. Richard looked at me. Good parents often teach the same lessons. I carefully folded the letter. I understand why you kept these. They remind me who my wife was. Olivia quietly added, they remind us who we're supposed to become. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then my phone vibrated. Jake. I excused myself and answered. Everything okay? Depends. Where are you? I'll explain later. No, explain now. I'm at Richard Bennett's house. Jake nearly shouted. You're where? It's a long story. I hope you're not getting back together with Sophia. I'm not. Good. Because I just saw something online. What? Sophia posted pictures. Pictures of what? Her new boyfriend. I frowned. What boyfriend? Some rich investor. My chest tightened for a second. Then, nothing. The pain wasn't gone. But it wasn't as sharp anymore. Jake continued. His name's Daniel Cross. I don't know him. You don't need to. Half the internet suddenly does. I'll call you later. After hanging up, I slipped my phone into my pocket. Olivia looked at me. Bad news? Not really. What happened? Sophia has someone new. Richard closed his eyes. So soon. Olivia didn't seem surprised. I expected it. I looked at her. You did? She nodded. She always believed expensive things could erase painful memories. Each outside. Unfortunately, expensive things only hide them. Olivia's phone suddenly lit up. She glanced at the screen, then quietly showed it to me. It was Sophia's social media page. A smiling photo. Sophia stood beside an expensive sports car. Daniel had his arm around her. The caption read, asterisk, finally with someone who matches my future. Asterisk, thousands of likes. Hundreds of comments. Asterisk, perfect couple. Asterisk, asterisk, power couple. Asterisk, asterisk, relationship goals. Asterisk. I stared for a moment before handing the phone back. It doesn't bother you? Olivia asked gently. It hurts. But not because she's with someone else. Then why? Because she's still trying to prove something. Richard looked at me carefully. What do you think she's trying to prove? I answered honestly. that leaving me was the right decision. Richard nodded slowly. And do you think she's convinced herself? I remembered the fear in Sophia's eyes earlier that evening. I slowly shook my head. No. Olivia looked toward the window. Vanessa is probably behind this. Who's Vanessa? Sophia's closest friend. Richard gave a tired smile. I've never trusted that young woman. Why? Because she enjoys watching people compete. Olivia nodded. She always encouraged Sophia to chase richer friends. And richer boyfriends. I finally understood something. None of this was really about me. It never had been. It was about appearances. Status. Approval. I looked at Richard. The proposal. It wasn't about replacing Sophia, was it? He met my eyes. No, it never was. Then what was it? He answered without hesitation. It was about protecting my family after I'm gone. The room fell silent again. For the first time, I stopped seeing his proposal as something strange. I started seeing it for what it really was. A desperate father searching for someone he could trust before time ran out. Choosing my own worth. I unlocked the garage before sunrise. The building was old. The paint was peeling. The office was barely big enough for a desk and 2 chairs. Still, when I stepped inside, I smiled. It was mine. Jake walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. So, he looked around the empty garage. Boss. I laughed. Don't call me that. Why not? Because it feels strange. It'll feel normal after your first customer. I looked at the empty driveway. What if nobody comes? Jake handed me a cup. They will. And if they don't, then we'll keep waiting. I smiled. You make everything sound easy. It isn't. But worrying doesn't fix engines. Before I could answer, an old pickup stopped outside. A gray-haired man stepped out. You the new mechanic? I am. My brakes are making a strange noise. I'll take a look. He watched me inspect the truck. After a few minutes, I stood up. You don't need new brakes. I don't. No, just a loose caliper bolt. He looked surprised. The dealership wanted to replace the whole system. I smiled. They would have made money. I'm making a customer. He laughed. I like your honesty. When he left, Jake grinned. See? 1 customer. 1 honest customer. By the end of the week, another came. Then another. People started recommending the garage to friends. Not because it looked impressive. Because they trusted us. One afternoon, my phone buzzed. Olivia. I hesitated before answering. Hello. I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all. I found someone who needs a fleet of delivery vans serviced. I blinked. You're recommending me? I recommended a good mechanic. You didn't have to. I know. There was a brief silence. I hope you don't mind. I don't. Thank you. They'll call you tomorrow. They won't expect special treatment. They'll expect honesty. I can do that. I know. After hanging up, I stared at the phone for several seconds. Jake noticed. Olivia? Yeah. She seems different. Different how? She helps without making you feel like you owe her. I couldn't argue. He was right. A few days later, I met Olivia at a small cafe. She arrived carrying a notebook instead of a designer handbag. You brought work. She smiled. I always bring work. I thought rich people relaxed. We do. Sometimes. We both laughed. She closed the notebook. So, how's the business? Better than I expected. You look happier. I think I am. I'm glad. I looked at her. You've helped me more than you realize. I only introduced you to good people. That was enough. She stirred her coffee. My father keeps asking about you. I hope he's feeling better. He has good days. And bad ones. I'm sorry. So am I. We talked for almost 2 hours. Not about relationships. Not about the past. We talked about books. Our favorite childhood memories. The small dreams we never told anyone. When we finally left, I realized something. For the first time in months, I had spent an afternoon without thinking about my heartbreak. Life was quietly moving forward. One evening, Jake rushed into the garage with his phone. You need to see this. What happened? He showed me a business interview. Daniel Cross sat beside a television host. Sophia smiled next to him. The interviewer asked, "So, Daniel, how did you become successful so quickly?" Daniel smiled confidently. "I have excellent connections." He wrapped an arm around Sophia. "And an incredible partner." The interview continued. Then Daniel casually said, "The Bennett family has always supported my vision." I frowned. Did Richard approve that? Jake shook his head. "I don't think so." A week later, I learned the answer. Olivia called. "You were right." "About what?" "My father never gave Daniel permission to use our family name." "What happened?" "He signed contracts while pretending Dad supported him." "That's serious." "It is." She sounded tired. "Is Sophia okay?" Olivia was quiet for a moment. "I don't think she's happy." "Why?" "Daniel decides everything. What she wears, who she meets, even what she posts online." I remembered the smiling photos. Maybe they weren't as perfect as they looked. Several days later, I accidentally saw Sophia outside a luxury hotel. She noticed me immediately. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she walked over. "You look different." "I've been busy. I heard your garage is doing well." "It is." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm happy for you." "Thank you." She looked down at the ground. "You really built it yourself?" "Every bit of it." "No investors?" "No." "No help from my family?" "No." She nodded slowly. "I always underestimated you." I didn't answer. She took a deep breath. "Daniel bought me a new car." "Congratulations." "And a penthouse." "That's generous." She looked at me. "Why don't you ask if I'm happy?" I met her eyes. "Because if you were, you wouldn't need me to ask." She looked away. For the first time, I saw uncertainty instead of pride. "I should go." "I hope you find what you're looking for." She gave a sad smile. "I thought I already had." She walked back toward the waiting car. Daniel never got out. He simply honked the horn. Once, then again, impatient. Sophia quickly opened the passenger door and got inside. The car disappeared into traffic. Jake walked out of the garage a minute later. "You okay?" I watched the empty road. "Better than okay." "You don't sound angry." "I'm not." "Jealous." "No." "Then what?" I smiled. "I finally understand something." "What?" "My value was never decided by the person who couldn't see it." Jake grinned. "Took you long enough." I laughed. "Yeah, it did." That evening, I locked my garage with a different feeling in my heart. I wasn't trying to prove anyone wrong anymore. I was simply building a life that finally felt right. And for the first time, that was enough. When karma starts knocking, the first sign that something was wrong came from Jake. He rushed into my office carrying his phone. "You need to see this." I looked up from an invoice. "What happened?" He placed the phone on my desk. A news reporter stood in front of Daniel's company headquarters. The headline covered the entire screen. "Investment firm under fraud investigation." I frowned. "Daniel?" Jake nodded. "They froze several of his accounts this morning." I stayed quiet. The reporter continued. "Authorities believe investors were promised unrealistic returns while company funds were redirected into private accounts." I slowly leaned back. So it finally caught up with him. Jake folded his arms. "You don't sound surprised." "I'm not. A man who builds everything on lies eventually runs out of places to hide." Jake smiled. "I've missed this version of you." "What version?" "The one who thinks before speaking." Before I could answer, my phone rang. "Olivia." I answered immediately. "Hey." Her voice sounded tired. "Have you seen the news?" "I have." "It's worse than it looks." "What happened?" "My father spent the entire morning talking to lawyers." "Is the company involved?" "No." "But Daniel kept using our family name during his business meetings." "So people think Richard supported him." "Exactly." I rubbed my forehead. "That must be a nightmare." "It is." "But Dad already released a public statement." "What did he say?" that our company has no connection to Daniel's investments and never approved his business practices. I nodded. That was the right decision. It was, but the damage is already spreading. How's your father? He blames himself. He shouldn't. He says if he had spoken sooner, none of this would have happened. I knew that feeling. Regret always arrives after the damage is done. I'll call you later, she said quietly. I have another meeting. Take care of yourself. You too. After the call ended, I looked out through the garage window. Customers kept arriving. Life kept moving. The world rarely stopped for someone's mistakes. 2 days later, another headline appeared. Several major investors had filed lawsuits. Daniel disappeared from every television interview. His confident smile was gone. So were most of his supporters. Jake walked over holding another cup of coffee. Guess who vanished? Who? Vanessa. I almost laughed. Already? She deleted every picture with Daniel and Sophia. That was fast. Apparently, she doesn't like sinking ships. I shook my head. Some friendships only exist while the cameras are watching. That afternoon, Olivia called again. I need a favor. What is it? Several employees are afraid they'll lose their jobs because clients are canceling contracts. I thought your company was involved. We aren't. But rumors spread faster than facts. I understand. Some of our staff drive older cars. They can't afford repairs right now. She hesitated. I know this is a lot to ask. What do you need? Could you help them? I smiled. Send them over. I'll charge only for parts. She went silent. Ethan, you don't have to thank me. I wasn't going to. What were you going to say? I was going to tell you that my father was right about you. I laughed softly. I hope he doesn't start asking me to marry someone again. She laughed for the first time in days. I'll make sure he behaves. For the next week, my garage stayed full. Teachers, drivers, office workers, mechanics from other shops. Many of them worked for the Bennett Company. Some couldn't pay everything immediately. I trusted them anyway. Jake noticed. You never learn. What? You keep believing people are good. Most of them are. And the ones who aren't, they eventually reveal themselves. Late Friday afternoon, I was cleaning my hands when I heard a familiar voice. Can we talk? I froze. I turned around slowly. Sophia stood near the garage entrance. She wasn't wearing designer clothes. There was no expensive handbag, no cameras, no perfect smile, just tired eyes. Jake looked at me. I'll give you two some space. He disappeared into the office. I faced her again. You found me? I wasn't sure you'd let me. I haven't decided. She nodded. I deserve that. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, I asked, how are you? She gave a broken laugh. Do you really want the truth? Yes. I'm exhausted. She looked around the garage. It smells exactly the same. Oil doesn't change. No. She smiled sadly. People do. I crossed my arms. What do you need, Sophia? I came to apologize. I didn't answer. She continued. I kept rehearsing this conversation. And now, I don't remember any of it. She wiped away a tear before it could fall. I was wrong. I looked at her quietly. I thought money meant safety. I thought expensive things meant success. I thought people would respect me if I stood beside someone rich. Her voice cracked. I confused luxury with happiness. Hearing those words hurt more than I expected, because part of me still remembered the woman I had planned to marry. She stepped closer. Daniel isn't the man I thought he was. I know he controlled everything. I know I wasn't allowed to make my own decisions. I'm sorry that happened. She looked surprised. You're sorry? I don't enjoy seeing anyone suffer. Even me? I hesitated, especially the person I once loved. The tears finally escaped her eyes. I don't deserve your kindness. Maybe not, but I'm not going to become cruel just because someone else was. She covered her face for a moment. I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me. I stayed silent. I kept waiting for you to fight for me. She looked into my eyes. You never came back. You told me I wasn't enough. I know. I was stupid. No, you were honest. And honesty has consequences. She nodded slowly. I would give anything to take those words back. I took a deep breath. If you could, would you really become a different person? She couldn't answer immediately. I don't know. At least that's honest. She looked at me with hope. Is there any chance? The question hung between us. I remembered the ring that never reached her finger, the nights I couldn't sleep, the months spent rebuilding myself. Then I looked around my garage, at the life I had built, at the peace I had finally found. I smiled sadly. I'll always be grateful for the good memories, and I'll always regret how we ended. But if I walk backward now, I'll lose everything I fought to become. She closed her eyes. I understand. I wasn't sure she really did, but she accepted it. She reached into her purse and placed something on my workbench, the small velvet ring box, the same one I had left behind that night. I kept it. I think it belongs to you. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I gently picked it up. So this is goodbye? She whispered. I nodded, not because I hate you, but because I finally learned how to choose myself. She smiled through her tears. I hope one day someone loves me the way you did. I hope one day you learn to love someone before their success. She turned and slowly walked toward the street. I watched until she disappeared around the corner. Jake stepped out of the office. You okay? I looked at the old ring box in my hand. It still hurts, but it doesn't owe me anymore. For the first time since our story began, I knew the hardest battle had never been against Sophia. It had been against a version of myself that believed my worth depended on someone else's approval. That man was finally gone. A promise built on trust. The call came just after sunrise. I was replacing the engine in an old pickup when my phone started ringing. Olivia. I answered immediately. Good morning. Her voice was quiet. Can you come to the hospital? My hand froze. What happened? It's my father. Is he? Please. I just need you here. I'm on my way. I'll be there in 20 minutes. When I arrived, Olivia was sitting alone outside a hospital room. She looked exhausted. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes. She stood as soon as she saw me. You came. Of course I did. How is he? The doctors say his heart is getting weaker. I looked toward the closed door. Can I see him? She nodded. He's been asking for you. I stepped inside quietly. Richard smiled the moment he saw me. You still smell like engine oil. I laughed. I came straight from work. I'm glad. It reminds me you're still the same man. I pulled a chair closer to his bed. How are you feeling? He smiled. Old. I was hoping for a better answer. So was I. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he looked directly at me. I owe you an explanation. You don't owe me anything. I do. He took a slow breath. That day in my study, the proposal, it wasn't really about marriage. I frowned. I know. No, you know part of it. I wanted someone beside Olivia, but not because she needed a husband. She needed a partner, someone who would stand beside her when life became difficult. I stayed quiet. I've met hundreds of wealthy men. Some are brilliant, some are powerful, but very few are honest. He smiled at me. You never changed, even after everything Sophia did. I almost did, but you didn't. He reached for my hand. I've never trusted money. I've trusted character. And yours is rare. His words carried more weight than he probably realized. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything today. I only wanted you to understand. A nurse entered the room. Mr. Bennett needs rest. Richard nodded. I'll see you later. As I stood, he quietly said, Don't spend your life running away from happiness because someone else once hurt you. Those words followed me out of the room. Olivia was waiting near the window. How is he? He was worried about you. She looked down. He's always worried about everyone except himself. We walked toward the hospital garden. Neither of us hurried. Finally, she stopped. Ethan. Yeah. I need to tell you something. You can tell me anything. She laughed nervously. I've practiced this conversation for weeks. That makes two of us. She looked into my eyes. I don't expect anything from you. I don't want you to feel guilty. I don't want you to feel responsible. I listened without interrupting. She smiled softly. Somewhere along the way, I stopped admiring you and started caring about you. The words hung between us. I tried to ignore it. I told myself you needed time. I told myself you were still healing. She looked away. I still believe that. I took a slow breath. Olivia, she raised her hand. Please, you don't have to answer. I'm not asking you to choose me. I just didn't want my feelings to become another secret. I smiled. You know what's strange? What? I never felt pressured around you. Good. You never tried to impress me. I was too busy surviving. We both laughed. The silence that followed felt comfortable. Not awkward. Comfortable. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat alone in my apartment. The engagement ring I once planned to give Sophia rested inside my drawer. I looked at it for a long time. Then I closed the drawer again. That chapter of my life was over. The next morning, Jake found me staring at my coffee. You look terrible. I didn't sleep. Thinking. Too much. He sat across from me. About Olivia? I nodded. And Sophia? I nodded again. Jake sighed. Then answer one question. I'm listening. When you imagine your future, who brings you peace? I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I remembered countless moments. Olivia bringing coffee to the garage, listening instead of judging, helping people without expecting praise, believing in me before I believed in myself. Then I remembered the constant pressure I used to feel, trying to earn approval, trying to become enough. Jake smiled before I even spoke. You already know. I think I do. 3 days later, someone knocked on my apartment door. I opened it. Sophia. She looked tired. I won't stay long. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. What do you need? I heard about Dad. He's getting better. She nodded. I'm glad. There was a long silence. I made another mistake. I smiled sadly. Sophia, you don't have to explain anymore. I know, but I need you to hear this. She looked directly at me. I kept believing we could go back. We can't. I know. The truth is... She wiped away a tear. I don't miss our relationship. I frowned. What do you mean? I miss the person I used to be before I ruined it. Her honesty surprised me. I hope you find her again. So do I. She smiled sadly. I think someone else already found the place I threw away. She didn't say Olivia's name. She didn't have to. I nodded quietly. She took one step back. I won't bother you again. I wish you happiness, Ethan. I wish the same for you. She turned and walked away. This time, neither of us looked back. A week later, Richard returned home from the hospital. Olivia invited Jake and me for dinner. The atmosphere felt lighter than it had in months. Richard raised a glass of juice. I have something to say. We all looked at him. He smiled. I've spent too much of my life trying to control the future. I'm done doing that. Then he looked at me. Ethan. I met his eyes. I won't ask you to marry my daughter. Olivia looked surprised. Richard continued. If love exists, it will find its own way. The room became quiet. I looked at Olivia. She smiled. Not because she expected an answer, because she understood. I stood slowly. There is something I'd like to say. Everyone waited. I came into this family carrying heartbreak. I thought trust was something you could lose forever. I looked at Richard. You reminded me that character still matters. Then I looked at Olivia. You reminded me that love doesn't always arrive with excitement. Sometimes it arrives quietly. It grows through respect, through friendship, through showing up every single day. I walked toward her. I don't know what the future will look like, but I'd like to discover it with you. Her eyes filled with tears. Are you sure? I smiled. For the first time in a very long time. I've never been more sure. She took my hand. She didn't say yes. She didn't need to. The warmth of her hand answered everything. And as Richard smiled from across the table, I realized the greatest love stories aren't built on perfect beginnings. They're built on two people who choose each other, one honest day at a time. Some doors never open again. The call came before sunrise. I already knew why Olivia was calling. Even before I answered, I closed my eyes. Olivia? She didn't speak for several seconds. Then I heard her whisper, "He's gone." I couldn't find the right words. "I'm coming." "Thank you." When I arrived at the Bennett estate, the house felt strangely peaceful. There were no arguments, no raised voices, only silence. Olivia was sitting beside the living room window. She looked at me, then she stood and walked into my arms. For the first time since I had met her, she cried without trying to hide it. I wasn't ready. "I know." He smiled before he closed his eyes. "He asked about you." My throat tightened. "What did he say?" "He said..." She wiped away another tear. "Tell Ethan he never owed me anything." I couldn't answer. Richard had entered my life when I needed someone to believe in me. Now he was gone. A few days later, the family gathered for the reading of his final letter. Olivia unfolded the envelope carefully. "I don't think I can read it." I gently squeezed her hand. "I'll stay beside you." She nodded. Then she began reading. Asterisk, if you're listening to this letter, it means my journey has ended. Asterisk, everyone remains silent. Asterisk, don't waste your lives fighting over things that never mattered. Asterisk, asterisk, money can build houses. Asterisk, asterisk, only love, trust, and forgiveness can build a home. Asterisk, Olivia paused to catch her breath. Then she continued. Sophia, she looked toward her sister. Asterisk, you spent years chasing a life that looked beautiful. Asterisk, asterisk, I hope one day you choose a life that feels beautiful instead. Asterisk, Sophia lowered her head. Tears quietly rolled down her face. Olivia kept reading. Olivia, asterisk, thank you for carrying burdens that should never have been yours. Asterisk, asterisk, it's time to put some of them down. Asterisk, she stopped again. I gently nodded. You can do it. She smiled through her tears. Finally, she read the last part. Ethan, I froze. Asterisk, you reminded an old man that honesty still exists. Asterisk, asterisk, never stop being the man you already are. Asterisk, asterisk, that is worth more than everything I leave behind. Asterisk, the room fell silent. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. Richard had already said everything. Life slowly moved forward. Not because we forgot him, because that's what he would have wanted. Several months later, my garage had become one of the busiest repair shops in the city. Jake walked into my office, holding another stack of appointment requests. You've got another problem. What now? We're booked for the next 3 weeks. I laughed. That's not a problem. It is if you plan on sleeping. I'll hire another mechanic. Jake smiled. Look at you. What? You built all this yourself. I looked around the office. The walls weren't expensive. The furniture wasn't fancy. But every tool, every machine, every customer had been earned honestly. I guess I did. Olivia visited the garage that afternoon. She handed me a paper bag. Lunch. You didn't have to. I know. You keep saying that. Because it's true. We sat outside while watching customers come and go. She smiled. Your father would have been proud. My father? He taught you honesty. I smiled. He probably complained that I worked too much. She laughed. Richard would have agreed with him. For a while, we simply enjoyed the quiet. Then I looked at her. Can I ask you something? You already are. I reached into my pocket. She noticed immediately. Her eyes became wide. Is that? I nodded. It isn't the same ring. I wanted a new beginning. I stood, not because I wanted a perfect moment, because I wanted an honest one. Olivia, she slowly stood with me. I've learned that love isn't about proving yourself. It's about choosing each other every day. I don't promise a perfect life. I only promise an honest one. I opened the small box. Will you marry me? She laughed through happy tears. I've been waiting for you to ask. So, is that a yes? She nodded before throwing her arms around me. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Jake walked outside at exactly the wrong moment. He looked at us. Finally, he sighed. Took you too long enough. We all laughed. Our wedding wasn't held in a luxury hotel. It wasn't covered by magazines. There were no famous guests. Just family, friends, employees, neighbors, people who truly cared about us. As Olivia walked toward me, I remembered another day, another ring, another future that had fallen apart. This time, nothing felt forced. Nothing felt uncertain. When we exchanged our vows, I looked into her eyes. I choose you, she smiled, and I choose you. Those simple words meant more than anything money could ever buy. Not everyone received a happy ending. Daniel eventually stood before a judge. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Fraud, forgery, financial crimes. The man who once believed he was untouchable lost everything he had built on lies. Vanessa tried to distance herself. She claimed she knew nothing. But people remembered. Trust, once broken, rarely returns. The invitation stopped. The phone calls disappeared. For the first time in years, she had no audience left. One afternoon, months after the wedding, I saw Sophia outside my garage. She didn't come inside. She simply watched from across the street. I walked over. She smiled gently. You look happy. I am. I'm glad. She looked toward the garage. You really built the life you wanted. I built the life I needed. She nodded. I finally understand something. What? I didn't lose you because you became successful. She smiled sadly. I lost you because I couldn't see your worth while I still had the chance. I stayed quiet. There isn't a day I don't regret it. I'm sorry. You don't have to be. She looked at me one last time. You deserve better. Then she turned and walked away. This time, there were no tears, only acceptance. Some doors never open again, and maybe they aren't supposed to. That evening, I locked the garage and walked home with Olivia. She slipped her hand into mine. What are you thinking about? I smiled. I used to believe the greatest revenge was watching people who hurt me suffer. And now, I think the greatest revenge is no longer needing their approval. She squeezed my hand. I like that answer. So do I. I looked up at the sunset. Years ago, I believed my worth depended on someone else's opinion. I was wrong. My worth had never belonged to anyone else. It had always been waiting for me to discover it. And with that realization, I finally felt at home.